After the fireworks and military parade laid out for Donald Trump during last year's Bastille Day festivities in Paris, it's now the U.S. president's turn to give his French counterpart the red carpet treatment. Instead of a glamorous Eiffel Tower restaurant, the two leaders will dine at another historic landmark, Mount Vernon, home to America's first president, George Washington. Macron will also get a 21-gun salute and a chance to address the U.S. Congress. But beyond the pomp and circumstance, there will be tough issues on the agenda.
When Mr. Trump came to Paris last year, it was the beginning, it was the beginning, it was the happiness of the beginning. Now the beginning is over, and now we must work, they must work, and that is much more difficult.
Iran, trade, Jerusalem, climate change. There are a lot of areas where President Trump and President Macron do not see eye to eye. The U.S. leader was not invited to a December climate summit in the capital after he pulled out of the Paris climate deal.
And if we're here today, it's because many have decided not to readily accept the U.S. federal government's decision to leave the Paris Agreement.
But today, Macron is widely considered Trump's go-to leader in Europe, the man who can interpret Trump's thinking for other European leaders and also fight for European issues. Some analysts see this Washington trip as a key test of whether this balancing act can work.
If he gives the impression he is too much aligned on Washington and Trump in particular, this can backfire domestically here in France, especially if French interests or European interests are put at risk by a decision that the Trump president would take.
France's youngest president ever and America's oldest one make an odd couple. Macron believes in multilateral institutions and alliances. Trump in America first. Macron is a workaholic. Trump is a tweetaholic. Then, of course, there was the famous handshake. There have been other U.S.-European special relationships, George Bush and Tony Blair, Barack Obama and Angela Merkel. This one may lift France's stature and Macron's on the world stage.
What really sticks France and the United States together, and something that Germany and the UK cannot sell today to Washington, is this defense military cooperation and this military, general-to-general cooperation.
That cooperation has been seen in fighting extremist groups in the Sahel and last week's joint strikes against suspected Syrian chemical weapons sites. But as Trump talks about pulling U.S. troops out of Syria, Macron wants to invest in a longer-term political peace process. France and Europe are also worried Washington will withdraw their tariff exemptions and pull out of the Iran nuclear deal.
Today, really, there is a big disagreement between Mr. Macron and Mr. Trump about what are we going to do with the nuclear agreement on Iran.
Others believe the two leaders are closing differences on Iran. Perhaps they will on other key issues, which will allow them to part with the same smiles they did last July. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Paris.